Greetings and welcome to this week's edition of Delta Media Group's Tech Tuesday. This week we are going over something that I think we have gone over before. I'm sure we have. And we've made some updates to it basically. So it's been kind of a theme for us the past few weeks. You know, we keep coming out with updates, so we keep kind of firing off the Tech Tuesdays to go over each of our updates. So in this case, I am going to go back into seller reports. I like seller reports because they are simple, and it is the simple things that are my favorite. So I'll just go ahead and give you a brief description of them. We'll go back through how to set one up, and I'll give you an idea what updates we've made to it. So into the DeltaNet we go. So here I am on my welcome page, and this is the page you first run into when you log into the DeltaNet. If I want to set up a seller report, I will go down here to listings, and then active listings, and then I will just choose from my listings here which one I want to add a seller report to. So before I actually add it, what seller reports are is a weekly report that you set up to go out to a specific customer, which generally would be the seller, that includes all of the listing traffic stats for a particular report. So, or for a particular listing rather. So as we look through these, I'll go ahead and set one up for, and we'll just do the first one, why not? So in the seller reports column, I'm going to click on none set, and that's going to take me to the seller report setup wizard. And in this case, I can set one up to go to myself if I just want a weekly traffic report for this listing. I can set one to go up to just the customer, or I can set one to go to both of us. That way I see the report that's going to my customer. So I'll go ahead and click set up a report to a seller. And you can see also we have the button here that you can send yourself a preview. This is actually an old preview, so they don't really look like that anymore. But we'll say set up report to a seller. And step 2, we just enter the test seller person. So we enter the first name, last name, and email address. Proceed to the next step. Now what the system will then try to do is search through your customer database and see if it can find a match. It has found something close, but we can determine, you know, if we say, yeah, this is the right person, I can go ahead and check this box. It'll select that customer and I can click next step. Or I can click no sellers matched and it will create a new customer with the information that I've entered. So you can go either way with that. So in this case, I'll just go ahead and select this one, next step. So now it's going to let us choose whether we want to send it to just the agent, just the seller, or a seller with a copy to the agent. So usually the good idea is to go with the third one. That way, you know, you get that email and you see the same thing that your seller is seeing. The only reason I can think of that you wouldn't want to do that is if you're getting a lot of these, you know, if you have a whole bunch of listings you have these set up for, and maybe you don't want this email for all of them. Know that you can go into the DeltaNet and look at that customer's history and see the seller report that went to them anyway, so you don't necessarily need to have it sent to yourself. Now as far as the day it will send on, by default it will set that to the current day, but you can set that to any day of the week. So if you want that to go out every Friday, for example, let them stew over it over the weekend. So we'll set that as Friday. And now one of the things that we've added to this fairly recently is you can override the system defaults for additional listings that the seller reports include. So by default, seller reports will include other comparable listings in the area, recently sold listings if there's data for it, stuff like that. And how it will determine what listings are comparable to this listing is based on this criteria. So by default, it's going to look at listings that have a price of within 30%, well 30% higher or 30% lower than the price of your listing. If you think that range is too large or too small, you can change that here and you can specify an actual minimum and maximum price for the comparable listings that it will use on these reports. And you can see it tells you minus 30% and the actual value of your listing minus 30% is going to be $245,000 in this case. And it does the same thing for all of these so that you can see what your actual listing stats are and what it's looking at and then change those to what you want them to be if you want to change them. Square feet, so minus and plus 15% of your listing square feet is what it is by default. It says 0 here because I'm using a pocket listing and I didn't set square feet for it. If I could go back and do that again, maybe I would. But that ship has sailed. So just know that you can set a minimum and maximum square feet here, and that will deviate from the 15% that it does by default. My listing has 3 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms, so It labels those 3+ and 2+ here, so you can change those to whatever you'd like them to be. If you want to look at lot size, you can do an acreage range. You can look at specific property categories. So by default, it's just kind of looking at area. But let's say that there are a lot of condos in this area and you're looking at a just regular residential single-family home. I wouldn't necessarily consider that comparable with condos. So, you know, if your area is like that and you want to exclude condos from the search, you could limit the comps here to just residential and single family. That way you know you're comparing like listings to like. And then you can choose from different location types and look at the location. So if you want to narrow it down to a specific zip code or a specific city, anything like that, you can change those comparables here, and then you would just type in the name of the area here. So once you have all your comparables set up the way you want them, assuming you want to set them instead of just leaving them as the defaults, we'll go ahead and click Finish. And now our seller report is set up. So now the beauty of this is you can go back in here at any time and you can make changes to it. Now it's another recent addition. So you always had the ability to turn them on and off or delete them. But now if I go back to Listings and Active Listings and I click on the seller report that I have set up, it takes me to this page where I can leave it in here and turn it on and off. So if I turn it off, it'll just stop sending the email. If I no longer want to get it, I can change this seller with a copy to an agent. I could change that to just seller so that it doesn't send them to me also anymore and keep sending them to the seller. I can change the day that it sends on, and I can go over here and click on Modify. And you can see this is where I change the seller copy to agent or what day it sends on. And then I can also go in here and change up all those comparable statistics if I want. So that way I can go in at any time and I can make any kind of modifications if I find out that it's, or if I look at a few samples of this report as it goes out and I see that it's including comparables that I wouldn't necessarily consider comparable to the listing that I'm actually trying to sell. So pretty cool. That is all there is to the actual seller report setup. Now, as it comes down to the format of the seller report and what the seller report itself actually looks like, I can go down here to Preferences, Email Messages, and I can find my seller reports on this page. I'm doing it the hard way. I'm just going to scroll down here. There we are. Seller reports. So first, I can customize the subject line on the seller report, which by default, this will automatically be replaced by the customer's name. So listing traffic report 4, and then drop the customer's name in. But I can modify the subject if I want. This is the introduction email that will appear on the seller report. So keep in mind that this message appears on all the seller reports. So make sure to use variables in here like customer name. And you can see at the top of this section what variables are available. There we go. So these are all the different variables that are available that you can plug into these that'll automatically fill in with the customer information. The main thing is you want to make sure not to use, you know, an individual customer's name here, because then it will show that customer's name on all of your seller reports. So you want to stay away from that if you can help it. And so you can go through here, you can customize the actual message, and then it drops your signature in here at the bottom, and you can customize that as you see fit also. And then for the seller report itself, you can see here the options that you can turn on and off for it. So by default, all these things should be turned on. So it'll show a section that shows all the comp listings, and it decides what listings are comparable based on the settings you put on the report. Same for pending listings. It's deciding which comparable pending listings. Again, it's looking at the criteria you put in. Sold listings section. It's also including that if you have sold listing data on your website. And you can also choose whether or not you want to include the search engine crawler views. So some people just want to see actual customer views, you know, actual people who have come in and viewed the listing detail page. If you only want to see that and don't want to see how many times a search engine crawler has kind of looked over the page to index it, then you can uncheck this box and not include those crawler views. And then lastly, you can choose which template you want to use for these. So the example I mentioned earlier for when you're setting the reports up is from this earlier template. You also have template 2 that you can choose from, and you can see here how that looks. And then lastly, our newest template is template 3 over here, which works a little better mobile responsive, and it's a little more cleaned up. Just a newer version of the template. If you wanted to use that one, you would just click here and click Update Traffic Report Template, and then it'll use the new one. All right, so that is all there is to it. Seller reports. Hopefully you've learned something new today. So as always, Thanks a lot for joining me this week. If you have any questions, concerns, comments, feel free to comment on the video or send an email to support@deltagroup.com or give us a call. If you want to get notifications of when these videos come online or when we do these live, go ahead and follow our Facebook channel or follow our Facebook account page or subscribe to our YouTube channel, and you should get notifications of those. Otherwise, thanks a lot for joining me, and I will see you next week.